up here on the big stage. I've got 4 CIOs who are either local with a local company or are with a company that's doing work here in the local area and contributing to the local economy. So just a little bit of background on myself. I'm a retired naval aviator. I retired here in 2013. When I left the Navy, I retired as the CIO for Naval Education and Training Command, and went into the civilian world. Eventually got pulled back and affiliated with the Navy again. Came on board with a company called CSRA, and took over some of the programs that they run here in the Pensacola area. But I started this group, we call it the ITEN CIOs group. And I started this about 5 years ago, and it was really born out of the fact that I was sitting in a CIO position. It was new to me. I hadn't been a CIO before. We're trying to figure out how to improve and increase our capability for all the Navy training networks around the world. And as I looked around, there was not a lot of places to turn to figure out solutions. There were challenges that I knew were common across all IT organizations, but there was no group, there were no fellows to reach out to. And coming from the aviation community, we always had some sort of, whether it was the Junior Officers Association or your senior officers that would get together, you'd help each other out. So I started reaching out and to the local IT organizations, and I started asking, hey, is anybody interested in getting together? The overwhelming response was, yeah, that's a great idea, let's do it. So the ITEN CIOs was born, and we started with a panel at ITEN WIRED in 2012. Again, that was a big success. We brought it back every year since then. And the whole purpose behind the panel, anyway, was that we wanted to get a message out to the IT community. We wanted everybody to understand, one, where we as the leaders in the IT industry here in the Pensacola area, where we saw the industry going. What were going to be our needs, the IT community's needs in the out years. And the idea behind that is to allow the folks who are coming into the industry or are looking to innovate or change career paths, what's coming down the road? What should I look to learn about next? A lot of new technologies coming out, a lot of new ideas coming out, new ways of delivering IT, and we want to make sure that the folks whom we employ understand where we're going and what we're doing, and also, and very importantly, is our service providers. There's a lot of small businesses out there that we reach out to, that we partner with in order to get to meet our needs, our IT needs. And we want to make sure that our support and service providers understand where we're going as well. So 2 years from now, when I've got a new technology or a new way of delivering IT, I don't have to go to a company based out of DC. I know at least everybody here in the service providers in the Pensacola area knew it was coming, and they had the opportunity to either go out and develop those skill sets or the expertise in that technology, and allow us to, I guess, keep it local, if you will. But there's, I don't know if I'll let you guys talk about it, but there was nothing more frustrating to me than having several hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars that I had to send out of Pensacola area in order to get a service that could easily have been provided by somebody here, but nobody knew it was needed, and they didn't have the time to spin it up. So that's kind of the purpose behind this. Again, thank you all for coming. I've got, like I said, I got 4 CIOs here, and we'll start on the far end. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to introduce their names, and then when I'm done, I'm going to turn it over to them and let them tell you a little bit about themselves, the company that they represent, and what they're doing here in Pensacola. And then we got a couple of topics that we're going to start off talking about. And as we go through these topics, folks who want to say something will get a chance, and then I'll open it up as we go through the discussion to the floor. If you guys have any questions, either stand up or raise your hand, and we'll get a mic to you if you need it. If not, just shout it out. I'll repeat the question, and we'll see what the CIOs have to say. All right. So on the far end, we've got Tony Lawrence. He's with VOR Technology. We've got Steve Sarros with Baptist Healthcare. We've got Carla Lewis with C-Spire, and we got Micah Doney with Lakeview Center. So, Tony, to you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Again, Tony Lawrence. I'm actually the CEO of VOR Technology, although I'm dual-hatted as a CIO because of my background. We're the largest small business defense contractor at the National Security Agency and DISA. Currently, we have about 400 people. We specialize in cyber exploitation and space exploitation. Here in Pensacola, we've actually been in Pensacola since 2012 with the Joint Cyber Analysis Course contract. And most people don't know, cybersecurity was started here in Pensacola on Corey Station. I started doing cybersecurity in 2006. I went to school here in Pensacola in 2007 before I became an active cyber operator. So, I mean, this is a pretty cool place to be.
Steve?
So I'm Steve Sarros. I'm with Baptist Healthcare in Pensacola, Florida, and all the Baptist healthcare systems across the state are really mostly, if not all, independent community-owned assets. We are the only community-owned healthcare delivery system between Mobile and Tallahassee. We're pretty proud of that in terms of our connection to the community. We've got about 4,500 to 5,000 people that work in health delivery, another couple thousand that work in Mike's business unit on service, and Mike will talk about that. But we really do appreciate our position in the community as one of the larger employers in terms of driving healthcare, but also hopefully bringing in technologies. And when we look at things from a CIO perspective, the number one issue is always resource management and cost management. It just comes back to that. You got to do everything smart. The second thing, the third thing, we're really maybe communication and infrastructure. And again, those are things that we like to provision as local as possible in terms of those key components to IT delivery. Our PMO is emerging as a very important asset to the company, not just for the IT projects, but for really our overall enterprise projects. This security thing that we're all hearing about, I think the last couple conferences were all around cloud. It's sort of refreshing to sort of put cloud a little bit to the side and get to another topic, although security wouldn't have been my first choice. Then you get to essentially what we really want to get to is collaborate and get all those four elements into empowering our employees, our team members, to deliver great service and care, or just services in the field, and then really transform the business. And we really are doing an exciting project right now at Baptist Healthcare and at our Lakeview Center Industries in terms of new IT systems that are really going to put us on the map in terms of empowering our caregivers with all the tools they need circa 2017, because it still isn't right. And if you've got a Baptist doctor and you go to see your Baptist doctor in November, you might hear some noise and you might see some shuffling around, because we're going to be putting all new systems in. Every caregiver at Baptist Healthcare System will be using a new tool to deliver your care in November. And then when that comes together, we will really do a lot to improve the community, the health of our community, helping people through life's journey.
Okay. I'm Carla Lewis, the CIO of C-Spire. C-Spire is really the nation's largest privately held company. We have a variety of lines of business. We have wireless, we have home services, but specifically here in the area, we focus a lot on what we call our C-Spire business solutions that you see around. It's hosted for it. We talk about connectivity, cloud services. We have our tier 4 data center in Starkville, Mississippi, where we offer a variety of cloud products, infrastructure, as a service, DR as a service, backup as a service, security as a service, all of those needs that a lot of us have, on a daily basis. Big things, that we're working on. We talk about, I've heard it here, talk about our digital transformation. That's who we are as well. That is, where we are enabling all of our customers to transform. How best do you want to interact with us? What's the best way for you to interact with us? And that's digital, so that you can self-serve, so that you can deliver and really not have to pick up the phone and call someone, right? So that you can self-serve. We definitely like to talk to all of our customers, but for those routine things, right? We want to enable all of our customers to do that, on their own. So that is via our website, our mobile app, and various other platforms. But that is a big focus of ours in the area of automation, in the area of digital transformation, enabling that for all of our customers.
There it is. Mike Idoni from Lakeview Center. A part of Baptist Healthcare in Pensacola, a large, growing, diverse conglomerate. So if you think about Baptist and Lakeview as just being hospitals and physician groups and a mental health facility, that's just the tip of the iceberg. We have businesses in 13 states, in Washington, D.C., and now in South America. And we're doing child protective services, vocational services, community behavioral health services, managed care services, where we're like an insurance company, and we're actually running Dairy Queen franchises in Tampa to generate monies back into our nonprofit mission. So quite diverse. If you looked at us 20 years ago, heavily office-based. If you look at us today, highly mobile, highly remote, and all the challenges that come with that. Just listening to you and Steve and Tony on the self-serve, it is a growing need. If we're constantly the ones they have to go to put the food in the bowl, then there's a problem there, right? We shouldn't be the impediment to the process. We should be the ones who are enabling efficient and effective solutions and roadways and pathways to our workforce doing their mission every day. And with the project management, like Steve brought up the PMO, we see more and more of a need for that because we always have things going on. There's never a quiet day when you're working in a business like ours that has about 8 primary businesses. It's like 8 businesses under one umbrella. There is never a downtime. There's never a down cycle, and it is a challenge to stay on top of all those things. We can never internalize all the technical expertise we need for the very reason Steve brought up, cost. And there are certain ad hoc specialties that we need to be able to pull on from trusted partners, as we were talking about earlier, Sean. We need to know who are those trusted partners and who can we pull on, who's going to be responsive to us, give us the services we need, and work with us as a partner, not just as a vendor, but as a partner. And so that's, anyways, the intro.
Thank you, guys. Yeah, and I'll just add on with to what Mike said, that the idea of partnerships. Us at CSRA, we value partnerships greatly. They're as big a company as we are with 18,000 employees. My local customer here, I need some local small business partners to keep delivering the solutions. So when you guys are thinking about coming on as a sub to either any of these organizations to provide services, think in terms of partnership. And I'll tell you what, that goes a long way. It delivers a better product to the customer, and the customer is always a lot happier. And when you become that trusted partner, nobody's going to dislodge you. You've got a pretty good revenue stream there. So. Okay, so like I said, we've got a couple of topics we're gonna go over, but the first one, and this is I think this is a very apropos topic, and the topic is, what is cyber? And I wanted to ask these guys what their opinion is on the difference between the way civilian or commercial looks at cyber and the way government looks at cyber. Because one of the things that we have here in Pensacola is we do have a lot of government IT. That's my primary focus. But we also have commercial, we have healthcare, we have communications. So I wanted to get a perspective out there so everybody kind of understands cyber. I mean, it's one of those topics that always goes on at these conferences. But what does that really mean? And I think, I'll let them talk, but I think you're going to be surprised at the differences. So, Tony?
All right. Yeah, I'll take this one. I've heard tons of different definitions of what cyber is, but what I can talk about is cyberspace and the cyber domain. So basically anything that transmits, receives, or stores data constitutes cyber, right? And the electronic devices attached to those means. So basically, so what is that? That's everything. Everything nowadays is cyber. The government and commercial organizations, they look at cyber differently. When I first started with cybersecurity, it was basically computer network operations, CNO. And CNO was a very simple concept. It was comprised of C&E, computer network exploitation, computer network defense, and computer network attack. 3 things. Boom, bada bing, bada boom, that's it. It was very, very simple. And those operations were primarily conducted at the National Security Agency. So most people within my arena would say that the birthplace of cyber is NSA. So anyone that you hear about that's an expert at cybersecurity usually has come from the NSA. So why is that, right? NSA has funding from the government, billions and billions of dollars, spent on building a robust infrastructure capable of exploiting our nation's adversaries' systems. So anyone we're going to war with, NSA has the capability to hack into foreign targets' systems and identify what our enemies are going to do. And they have that capability to protect the United States, to protect us. They do not use that for domestic purposes, but I'll talk about that later. So NSA has the best hackers in the world. And those hackers are using billion-dollar systems to hack into other people's networks. So you have your run-of-the-mill hackers, your guys hacking from their mom's basements, you have those hackers, and then you have these very, very experienced exploiters at NSA. So that's computer network exploitation created at NSA, started at NSA. Over the last few years, as we heard Jeff talking about earlier, defense has become a major issue because hackers, your run-of-the-mill hackers, and nation states are now exploiting our systems. So we have to defend them. Defense was started at NSA as well. The Information Assurance Directorate was the premier organization for defense. NIST was associated with creating defense, and so was DISA. So you have defense and attack. Attack is a large aspect of cybersecurity. When the whole attack picture, when we identified that we needed to attack our adversary systems, it wasn't to shut down anything for malicious purposes. It was to stop attacks coming from other places to our systems. Some of the individuals exploiting our systems were so advanced that we couldn't stop the attacks. So we needed the capability to attack their systems to shut it down. So NSA was not allowed to conduct attacks. So boom, US Cybercom was born. Utilizing Title 10, the Warfighter Authority, they are allowed and capable to attack our adversaries with presidential approval. So bada bing, bada boom, that's CNO. So that's how the government sees cybersecurity. Commercial organizations aren't allowed to hack into anybody's networks. It's illegal, right? They can't hack into the Chinese, they can't hack into the Russian systems. It's all illegal. If anybody tells you they're doing that, they should be in jail. So commercial organizations have a defensive aspect on cybersecurity. They're more focused on protecting their networks or their clients' networks. Now, you have some commercial organizations that conduct penetration testing. They'll hack into a network or try to hack into a network to identify vulnerabilities so that other people can hack in. But commercial organizations are primarily focused on defense. So the government has offensive and defensive capabilities, whereas commercial organizations primarily have defensive missions. So in a nutshell, that's cybersecurity, from my perspective.
Well, that's a great perspective, because that's where, when we get to private industry, our concerns are, in healthcare especially, is always centered around privacy. There's not a lot of intellectual property that we house at Baptist Healthcare in terms of plans for nuclear plants or really sophisticated intellectual property. But our intellectual property is actually your patient records, and Baptist Healthcare does have some high-profile patients that come and go from our health system. So we basically do believe that we are a little bit higher target than your typical community hospital, and we really work to make sure that we keep our systems safe defensively, because the way I look at the world, there's nuisance hackers, which are those guys in the basement, that are just doing it for ego. And then there's this criminalization that's really probably longer than I know, but at least over the last 5 to 7 years, we've been hearing about really the criminalization of this hacking. And so that's really what we are interested in. We're not worried about offensive. As you said, we're not a government entity. So it's pretty simple, or it's a little bit more straightforward in terms of what our objectives are, but it really is about keeping our data safe and our data private, and then making sure on the other side is that whole idea about receives, transmits, and stores. And the challenges that we really have in healthcare is that mobility element. Our clinicians and our caregivers and our patients want to have the mobility to access their data and do their work in a much more mobile manner. And that's probably the biggest thing we're facing right now is mobile security, because we pretty much know and have encrypted our data that's at rest or in one place, but we really are looking at expanding our capabilities in terms of mobility, whether you call it BYOD or really even our provisioning all kinds of tablets. We probably went from 10 tablets 2-3 years ago to into the hundreds of tablets and iPhones today that we're doing serving our patients with and taking care of our business with. So those are the challenges I think that we are facing on that cyber.
And I will say that we're the same. We're in the same boat with you. When we have a lot of sensitive data, really that's really our own customers' data, and then but also being in the service provider industry, being in housing, data of folks from all different verticals. So all of it is important to us because in this space it's not a matter of if, it's when, right? And so, but you have to make sure that you just go back to the basics. How do we protect ourselves? We protect ourselves by doing the basic things every day, because anytime you hear of any type of breach or anything that's happened, and when you hear it and you hear it all and you get to the root cause and you hear the root cause, most of it is truly surrounding the basics. The basics things weren't being done, or those basics things were being done, but the people missed it, right? Because those hackers, they're out there, they have their own frameworks, that they have in place to try to really cause a breach for your organization. But when you think about the basics, you think about making sure our employees are trained. I was telling someone earlier, that the number one cause of a breach that we've seen is really in phishing, right? So when you talk about employee training, making sure that patching is occurring, you have a good security practice around that space, controlling access, encryption. So our goal is to make sure that we're doing all the basic things right. And when you do, that is how you protect yourselves from the worst happening to you, and that is the worst, right? In that space is you're losing data, to a breach or whatever.
It's interesting. You asked how it differentiated between government and commercial, nonprofit, and we have one IT contract that's on both coasts. With facilities in Monterey and over in Lorton and Alexandria, Virginia area. And when we go to those facilities, they are very locked down. It's very restricted on, when you go to Alexandria, there's like 3 levels of entry into that site before you can even get in. The last one being you have to step into almost like you'd have at the airport, this bubble, and even detects if it thinks there's more than one person in there. And if it thinks there's more than one, then there are guys with guns around you in no time. So it's very tight on who's allowed in, what's allowed in, and then once you're in, they've got their network locked down because their customer is themselves, right? So very secure network, not much outward facing at all, email very restrictive, all the devices are in there and there's not much leaving there and there's not much going in. And then I come back to us here, and who's our customer? Our customer is everyone out there in the community, and they expect us to be accessible over the internet for different things. Customer portals, patient portals. They expect to be able to walk in our facilities and have Wi-Fi available for them. And so to make all these things available, we somewhat open ourselves up. We are more exposed than the government facilities that I've experienced. And We had penetration testing over the last year, and we'll do that annually. And it basically told us what we knew, that where weaknesses would be where our infrastructure wasn't at its most current state, which takes money. We all know technology is not a one-time spend, right? It's ongoing investment. It is internet and email, anything that's outward facing and is allowing traffic back and forth. If all that was happening somewhere else and somehow we had access to that somewhere else in a tight way that didn't open us up, that is the best world. If that could be off-prem, I'd be singing its praises. And the other thing, surprise, our own people. That is really our biggest exposure, our own people and how they practice every day. What are they doing with their email? Are they sending email between their business email and their personal email, including some things they shouldn't even be doing that with, but are they going back and forth there instead of using our secured remote needs that we have made available? Are they practicing good hygiene? And so it really, as we look at it, if we, infrastructure currency, internal practices, and bring on the money, because it's a constant reinvestment. And it's another reason why, we really, the more spread we get with our facilities, the more challenging it becomes. If we had one facility where everything took place, best world, because you don't have to keep having redundant expenses. That's not our life, though.
All right, so, and I'll share from my experience and our client, and we just recently completed the cybersecurity inspection. So I guess the non-operational guys, the non-weapon systems, they really do, they look at compliance. Compliance is a huge thing. Are you following the best practices? Do you have all your systems configured correctly to mitigate all known threats? They also look at your folks. They look at the behavior of your organization and how people view cybersecurity. There's been a big push within DoD over the last few years that cybersecurity is not something you do to secure the networks. It's what you do every day. It's part of your job, and they're really looking as security as an enabler to the mission. So you've got all aspects of that. There's the physical security and the behavior, and there's constantly exercises, unannounced exercises going on, and they're basically these I call them pretty simple phishing expeditions, right? Where the organization itself will put out a phishing email and see how many people respond to it, and if they do respond to it, boom, the red flags go up, and the entire unit gets training. There's different ways that they approach it, but so essentially, if we were to sum it up, whether you're either government and you focus on different things, right, for cyber, depending on what your mission, what your business need is, why are you using IT? IT is a tool and it's a business enabler, but what is the business? And so you focus on the areas that you need to make sure are available to you for your business to continue, right? That's why we do what we do, right? To keep the business going. And to continue on cyber, there's we look at the Equifax hack, and we were talking about privacy and personal information. One of the things I'd like to hear from everybody up here on is what are we doing? What are the approaches we're doing on our IT systems? How are we optimizing the security while still preserving the functionality and the usefulness of the system?
I'll start. Security isn't a thing. It's really an ongoing, program, right? It's one of those things that it's a cycle. It's a cycle. So you have your internal teams, that's focused, on the internal things, all the basics that I talked about, right? So then we have all the controls that we have in place, and the internal team really checks to make sure that those controls are working. And that's both internal and external. It's healthy. to do, the external, penetration testing. We do that often, in our organization, even without our internal teams, security teams knowing about it, just to check to see how mature we are and are we getting better. But that is what we look for. We have this scorecard, and that's what you want to see. What is your risk score? Are you getting better? Vulnerabilities are never zero, right? They're never zero. Because there's always something new that's out there. But that's why you have the security practice, the whole program, to see that cycle work. You detect a vulnerability based on the severity. There's a certain SLA and timing that we need to remediate. It gets remediated, but it's a continuous cycle. But it takes dedication. It's not part-time jobs for people. It is teams that is their full-time job, to do. And that's what makes it work. And security, another thing for us, it's bigger than just IT. It's an organizational thing, because there are other folks, within the organization that play a key role in making sure that our level of security, our maturity in the space is where it needs to be. But the key thing is making sure that there's a good framework in place, there are controls in place, those controls are being monitored and checked on a regular basis, and to make sure that cycle continues to flow in order to keep it right.
Awesome. From my perspective, there's three things you need to do to stop, or not really stop, but to let me start over. First, you need to mitigate the risk. When someone hacks into your system, you need to make sure that they aren't able to gain a foothold and take everything, get everything. You need to be able to isolate that attack. After that, you need to hunt for malicious activity. For example, when I was working at NSA, we found out that that a nation state had hacked into our classified networks, secret and top secret networks, all the way up to the TS network for DoD. We did not know they were there. They were sitting in our systems for years. A group at NSA, A&O, Advanced Network Operations Group, they were looking for the Chinese hackers in our systems and the unclassified networks, and they stumbled upon this malware that was calling out of classified systems, trying to get back to a location that might be in Russia or might not be in Russia. Anyways, so that's how we identified that someone was in our system, because we hunted for it. So you have to have a team that's actively looking for intruders into your networks. And to be realistic, there's no way you can stop someone from hacking into your network. It's basically like being on, let's say there's 1,000 points of entry on a network. You can't be at 1,000 points all the time. Doesn't matter what type of software you're using. You can be using behavioral analysis software, identification software. You won't be everywhere all the time. But you need to be able to mitigate the risk so that the hacker doesn't infiltrate your entire network or shut down your network.
So Donald Rumsfeld is like the CIO's nightmare, because he came up with the statement, if you remember, we don't know what we don't know. We know what we know, we know we don't know, whatever, but that whole idea, we don't know what we don't know. And I hear that all the time on our IT projects, because we're going to go in with these new workflows, and everybody's sort of seized on that. And my concern is that if we as a private, not-for-profit, but a private company, don't have time to worry about what we don't know, because as Tony just said, they're everywhere, right? But what we can do is focus on what Carla and Tony both touched on, which is a culture of privacy and a deliberate behaviors to respect our patients and our team members with that privacy and security, and then a deliberate approach to really getting back to basics, which you mentioned, computer network operations. In all reality, what's sacrosanct at Baptist Healthcare is our change control and our, essentially going back to 20 years, 30 years ago, computer network operations, right? What got Equifax in trouble was they didn't patch for 30 to 45 days. There were large healthcare systems, nationwide healthcare systems, that got hit by the ransomware in May and June, where the patch was known in early March. So my task to my team is to make sure we see what we know and act on what we know, and not sit around worrying about what we don't know, because that's just idle conversation. And when we look at partners, that's what we're looking for, partners to come in. We're not looking for anybody to reinforce the fear of God. Again, what it is that's out there, lurking, but how do we get to the basics, build that culture of security? And again, these people coming up with Facebook are posting things to Facebook. Their respect for their own privacy, let alone others, I think is suspect. And we have to build that into them as they come on board at Baptist Healthcare to make sure they understand how important it is to respect their passwords, respect their sign-ins, respect their use of email, and then also on the IT side to really respect the deliberate. You don't see those dark-suited, white-shirted, I don't know white shirt, but those dark-suited, white-shirted guys with the cigarette stains on their teeth and on their shirts that used to be the MVS guys in the system, 390 world, in the 370 world, that kept everything safe. Those are the kind of people that we need in our IT infrastructure operations to just stay home. It's hopefully be boring. The Maytag repairmen, that's really what we're looking for.
So we have, especially since Steve came on board, he brought a lot of best practices as far as standards, governance. One of those things was clearly documenting what our standards were around our technologies. We call it our playground document. And basically, if we have any vendors that we're doing business with, we lay that in front of them. And so there's very clear expectations on what we expect from any services being provided, what we expect from any solutions that we're acquiring. And it speaks to security, privacy, confidentiality, and all those things. I'm not saying we would never sacrifice functionality. Our mission for Baptist Healthcare is to help people throughout life's journey. Our mission for Baptist Healthcare isn't to have the best IT infrastructure. That's not our mission statement. But we bank on that being there. Just like when I drove over here from our main campus today, I banked on those roads being in the right condition, right? I banked on them being safe. I banked on that traffic being able to flow. And whether I like to see them or not, I wanted to see Gulf Breeze Police through there making sure that if anybody misbehaved, they were going to be pulled out. That's the same thing I'm looking for my infrastructure, right? I want to have smooth roadways, trusted roadways. I want them policed. I want to know that when we need to go somewhere, we can get there so that we can deliver our mission and make sure that all those things are happening. I mean, we have some very gifted talent at Baptist. Got Daniel Lawrence and Andre Carter and Barbara Shulot sitting right back there. And I know every day that they're making sure that we are patched up, that we've got data that's encrypted at rest, that where the firewalls are in place and those rules are being updated daily, if not hourly. If there are certain things that come out, the desktops are being maintained with the right hygiene on them. So heavily reliant on that kind of talent, and they, in concert, have other specialists that they're employing, some of it from sitting in this room, to help make sure that we are shored up each and every day.
Yeah, so some of the points that these guys were hitting on that I want to bring to the forefront here. One is, you talked about you're not going to compromise your capability with your IT systems, right? But you need to make them secure. Well, from a DoD perspective, it took them a little while to learn that, right? Within government, I think probably across all government, there's this zero tolerance mentality, right? So, oh my God, we've got a vulnerability. Well, you got to shut it down. Well, what's the most secure computer system in the world? The one that's unplugged, sitting in the closet, right? But you can't do that. So oddly enough, I think over the years, DoD has learned that. And this is just something I see in the future in DoD, where honestly, my company and many of the other defense contractors out there, I think are going to need help with in the next 3 to 5 years, is DoD's transition to the risk management framework, where DoD's taking a much more serious look at mission first, but as secure as you possibly can. So it's a new approach. It's a continuous evaluation approach. Much like continuous process improvement that we see as a best practice, they're applying that to security, which I think the commercial sector has been doing for a long time. So DoD is adopting that approach. So understanding the whole risk management framework, the security approach, and then getting all of that documented is an area I see over the next 3 to 5 years that DoD and defense contractors are going to need people who understand and can do that for us. Tony, you agree? Okay. So that's kind of where we are. Another cyber topic that we'll touch on, and Tony brought this to the table, and I actually found it pretty interesting. I did some reading on it, but there's a new area, a new vector of attack, if you will, right? Just what we need. But the combination of cyber and space. Tony, you want to talk a little bit about that?
Sure. Space and cyber is a passion of mine. Now, I need everyone to keep an open mind here. All right, keep an open mind. You might think I'm a little bit too far ahead, but believe me, I'm not. Before I jump into space and cyber, let me talk about my experience at NSA. I worked for the director of NSA for 2 years. I was the agency's corporate briefer. I was a public affairs officer. I was a part of the team that stood up U.S. Cybercom. I've been in every office in NSA. I've seen files in their remote viewing program from 1987. Yeah, they had people sitting in a room, falling asleep, transmitting their mind to Russia and all these other places. It was a real program. I also spent a lot of time in archives. So seeing things like unexplained signals from outer space. I mean, crazy things you guys have never seen. Space has always been a topic for the government and NSA. So with cyber and space, as we discussed earlier, anything that transmits, receives, and stores data is the cyber domain, right? It's an actual domain, like land, earth, the air. Now the thing with those other domains, with land, water, air, they're finite, right? There's always been the same amount of water on earth right now. It's never been more, never been less, right? Same thing with land. There'll always be the same amount of land. But cyber is a lot different. As we branch out into space, cyberspace itself grows. As information transmits from one satellite, one receiver to another, the domain of cyber grows with it, right? It takes time for those communications to go from point A to point B. While that communication is transmitted, it can be exploited, right? So we have Elon Musk and SpaceX. They're rushing to Mars. They think they'll be to Mars in 2022, right? A couple of years from now, they'll be in Mars. It takes information about 4 hours to go from Earth to Mars, right? As mankind branches out into space, there's more opportunities for cyber or our communications to be exploited. So on the flip side of that, when you have assets in space, satellites, you can broadcast exploits, right? This is a public thing. I've heard speeches on it at Black Hat, DEF CON. Exploits can be broadcasted, right? I can broadcast a signal right now and exploit everybody's cell phones, because anything that's transmitting, receiving, or stores data can be exploited. And it doesn't matter what you do. So from space, your systems can be exploited. And there are solutions to that matter. At VOR, we're working on some very advanced things. We've been into quantum computing for some time. So when you look at quantum physics, there's several different aspects of it, right? 6 months ago, scientists at a university that we're working with transmitted information through quantum computing, right? So they transmitted a signal through quantum, and it is uncrackable, it's unhackable. I mean, because that information exists in multiple places. I won't get into the physics of it, but you can't hack that. The Chinese has successfully transmitted information from a satellite in space to a location in China utilizing quantum encryption. We can't break into that stuff. So that is where everything is pushing, towards space and towards quantum. Do I need to go in deeper, or is that
No, that's good. So one other aspect of space, and Carla, I think this may be apropos to your business, is cyber communications. and how much satellite assets do we have that we utilize for communications, and are those vulnerable? And then, as Tony was talking about transmitting, are our systems vulnerable to a hacked or hijacked satellite and a transmission from there? So those are the kind of the vectors I'm talking about. But Carla?
I would think that anywhere where you have things connecting, we're vulnerable. I can talk about everything that's out there. IoT, it's anytime we have things that are connected, we're vulnerable. But to protect ourselves, it still goes back to what we've been talking about here in how we protect ourselves. But I would say yes, we're definitely vulnerable.
Well, listening to Tony talk, I think at Baptist Healthcare we do quaint computing, not quantum computing, because all we're doing is blocking and tackling and trying to get information into our caregivers' hands. But it is exciting and it is amazing to hear this, and that's one reason I really appreciate this ITEN conference, because it sort of combines government with private, and I learn a lot when I come here, so I really appreciate this opportunity. But it really does get to the fact that everybody's mobile, everybody wants to be mobile, they're getting used to smaller form factors. I think one thing that we're really seeing in this mobility is people have given up on they haven't given up, but they've realized that mobility and size of what they can actually be mobile with means that they're going to have to accept feature function that fits on a device that can truly be mobile. An iPad, bigger iPad, is really not mobile. The regular iPad is barely mobile for most of our providers as they walk around the house. And they really want that sort of sweet spot iPad minis in smaller size. And it's 2017, but application developers are now getting to the point where they can put functional applications on those devices for our caregivers, to where nurses can administer meds, take vitals, and chart a patient's status from an iPhone 6S, which again, other industries have been doing this for years. That's a huge breakthrough, transformational opportunity for our nurses coming November 4th. So I think that's where the culture, the acceptance of that feature function, the development, the battery life, it has come together to where mobility is going to really take off. And however we make sure we're not having our signals stolen, the blockchain, however that encryption is going to really develop to make it really super secure, that's where maybe it's coming together at the right time for all of that to fit and be secure and functional.
We can hope. Mike.
Who the heck can go after Tony on this topic, right? Where can we even add anything, really? But since the beginning, there's always been thieves, right? And there will always be thieves, and those that are tempted, and those that are challenged to try to do things. So, and this just opens up even more windows as data is flowing out there in the ether. And I think that, we have a large body of our solutions that are running what we call on-prem, locally hosted in our own data center. But more and more of those are using subscription services. So, and I do find myself wondering, with the whole solution flow, where is all this? How's it making it from point A to point B? Where is the vendor housing this subscription service data? Is it just at this one location, or where else is it spawning? Where's their workforce? A lot of their workforce, and even some of ours, ends up offshore sometimes. So where are those offshore folks, and how are they connecting in? What are they using, and what might they be introducing in this? So definitely with the, with workforce being everywhere, and subscription services putting solutions everywhere, and hosting services being everywhere, it does bring some challenges and some worries and concerns and huge question marks as to where in the ether are we, right?
Excellent. Okay, so before we move off the exciting topic of cyber, I'd like to open it up to the floor. Does anybody have any questions of any or all of the CIOs up here?
Just a question about scalability. Yeah, we'll talk after. A question about scalability. there's been a lot of talk about containerization and what that's going to lead to, about distributing your systems. Some of you have some fairly large systems out there. Where do you see scalability of your systems changing, and what do you think is overhyped at the moment?
Okay, so in case everybody didn't hear, the question was about scalability, containerization of your data and your applications, and where do we see it going?
Let me start out because mine will be the lowest level answer, right? And then we'll graduate up. So first of all, Johnny Odom, thank you for your work. He's with the Escambia County School District, and we had a significant data sharing initiative with them in our child welfare area, so that we could provide them data on the children that we have in Child Protective Services, you may know foster care, and who've been pulled from homes where abuse has been reported and substantiated. Johnny and the school district had a need to know who these children were so they could better serve them. And so thank you for modeling that with us.
He's being nice. I got it really slow to him. So.
You know, it was an ace job. And, you know, in our infrastructures, enable that to happen in a secure manner, right? So we were doing our data things, which is really my specialty, is data and applications. And, but we relied on that secure infrastructure to be able to exchange this very private, confidential information in a secure and trusted manner. So thank you, Johnny. And kudos to infrastructure teams for keeping that kind of thing in place. But on scalability, I mean, from a low level, you know, we're heavily virtualized in our data center with well over 1,000 virtual servers. So, you know, when Steve talks about the challenges he puts out to Daniel Lawrence's team on keeping patched up and current, it is quite the challenge, because we need, what would you say, Steve, 5 nines of uptime? 5 nines of uptime, but yet keep everything patched up and current. Easy to do, right? Daniel, I'm glad that's on your plate and not mine. So with heavy virtualization, the ability to quickly add in processor, memory, storage, scalability, you know, overly simplified, doesn't seem to be so much of a challenge for us now, as long as we have the money to keep that infrastructure current. But the virtualization really adds in. And now with cloud too, and being able to use that for extended storage and possibly moving some things, helps out with scalability also. Anyway, that's it. That's the light intro. Now we'll graduate.
I would just say there's been I think a transformation in the last 3 years in terms of infrastructure opportunities for whether you're doing on-prem or in the cloud. And you know, last year and even this year, I'm still convinced that the idea that, you know, the cloud is just a de facto, you know, we're all going to end up there. That couldn't easily happen. Probably more from a security perspective than an infrastructure perspective, because I'm still convinced it's in Cisco and EMC and all the storage and server and network suppliers to be competitive in both cloud and on-prem. So they don't really want to limit their customer base to one of those vectors. But security could easily be the driving force in terms of people putting things, looking at their on-prem relationship. In the last 3 years, though, we were able to, with our big project here, with our EMR, essentially spend the same amount of money that vendor B, so we have vendor A and vendor B and vendor C, but you know, vendor A's cost footprint in the data center was X, and vendor B was X minus almost 30%. And based on the state of the VMware and the infrastructure with the Cisco and other vendors, HP, and then the storage, right? None of our databases, not so much our blobs and our PAX files, but our databases are all spinning on solid state. That all happened in the last, as far as I can tell, 2.5, 3 years, if not the last year. So from a scalability perspective, there's nothing in the way there from us to continue to just apply, you know, more essentially hardware, but virtual servers, memory, and storage. It's not unlimited, but it scales. It's manageable. We can use it to protect ourselves against ransomware. You know, we can do some very sophisticated things in our business that really 2-3 years ago wouldn't have been possible. So we're almost back to where we're, you're never as secure as you want to be, but we're almost as secure, I think, in today's day and age as a 390. It's the old IBM mainframes with the RAC-F and all those security certifications. We're almost, if not there, with the current state of even the Microsoft operating system and database softwares are really that much more secure, as long as you have somebody looking and reading, almost like the Federal Register, what's coming out and where are those threats emerging, where are the people like Tony and his firm identifying those threats. How do we get into that and make sure we stay as current as possible.
I can talk about this from a small business perspective. I use Amazon. That's how I spell AWS. It's the cost is a big issue for us as a small business, and services like AWS make it easy for us to scale very quickly, efficiently, and still have money to run the business. So don't have much for that talk.
Okay, well, I'd like to kind of draw some of this together, because you asked about containerization. We're still on the cybersecurity topic. We talked about virtualization. So just two quick things that we've done for some of our clients, and particularly here in the Pensacola area, is virtualizing their entire, in the middle of that project right now, virtualizing their entire classroom infrastructure. And what we found is we not only did we virtualize the environment, but we also virtualized the applications and the OS systems. And what that allowed us to do when we talk about containerization is all that data now always remains safely within the data center. It never actually leaves the data center. The data is accessed, it's processed, it's rendered, and then it's sent one pixel at a time to the endpoint. So at the endpoint, whether it's here in Pensacola, whether it's up in Newport, Rhode Island, whether it's out in Yokosuka, Japan, whether it's on Guam, the data is still here in the data center. The only thing getting transmitted across that wire are essentially the pixels that get presented on the screen. So that greatly reduced our security risk for anybody trying to access that data. I think it was a 75% reduction in known vulnerabilities just from that simple virtualization act. And then we talked about containerization. And so that was another project we did in the mobility area. A lot of your MDMs, your mobile device management systems, or MAMs, which I think is where the market's going to, if I'm reading it correctly, but that's your mobile application management. They use a system or a concept of containerization. Once again, your data always remains in the data center, and you have, basically, it's a sandbox on your device. It's a small area where some very minimal processing occurs. But again, 90% of that data always remains in the data center. It gets encrypted, it gets sent to your device then decrypts it and presents it to you. So the data is never downloaded to the device. So that's another security approach, a cyber approach that I know we're using in many of the projects that we do for our clients. And that's most of the MAMs and MDMs are utilizing that approach. They get different nuances to it, but that's what they're using. So, any other cyber questions? Bill.
Hey, John. That's probably isn't so much for Tony, but what we're seeing out in the industry, especially in the banking and finance industry, is they turn to cyber exercise training, especially their security operations center, how they're hosted, and they're going to a more military approach to how they train from the CIO and the board of directors all the way down to the IT head, and how they test those processes all the way up and down. And they're modeling after the military, the way we've done cyber training for years. I know Tony's very familiar with that. Is there any, we're not seeing it so much in the healthcare industry and others, but mainly in industry, finance and insurance. Is there an approach that you see where that's a benefit to your organization and how you train your cyber sale, how your security operations work today?
Okay, so the question, and I'm going to try and summarize, Bill. If I get it wrong, just wave at me. But so in the finance and the banking industry, we've seen a transition more to a military-style approach to cyber defense. And so Bill's question to the group up here is, we see that in the banking and finance, but what about in your industries? Is there a similar type approach, a different type of approach as we move forward to secure the networks?
So I can tell you that we follow the NIST framework, but that actually starts with us, with the Security Governance Committee that is the highest level, of the organization, and down from there and back up. And so following that framework comes with those basic, controls and processes and procedures that you should have in place and that you follow. And that is what we go by. We also have other SOC compliance and other things that we have to be compliant to be in the business that we're in. But it definitely starts with us, with our security governance, which is comprised of folks at the highest level all the way up, to our CEO of the company. And that works its way all the way down, to, the individual security teams, personnel that we have on our security team. But training across the organization and those individuals based on those practices, those best practices.
Very similar. In healthcare, we run. I don't think it's NIST, but every healthcare company has to have an incident command structure. In Pensacola, we practice ours a lot more than we did when I was in Michigan, with the hurricanes and the weather events that we practice for. And we really will mostly meld our cyber response into that around any downtimes, if there's a downtime. We are essentially repositioning the Chief Information Security Officer back into a more technical role, away from the HR compliance, where the pendulum had swung to where it was really all around HR and compliance. It's really moving back into the technical role, and that person will be leading sort of that sweet spot of incident that's not quite a downtime, and we don't have to declare an incident and bring our incident command together and clear running. So we are moving in a lot of that direction because of how that role has evolved into basically back into a more technical leadership role and incident leadership role versus compliance and HR.
Was that bill done? Another exceptional local service provider, just surrounded by exceptional service providers around here and partners. It's good seeing you, Bill. We just had we're healthcare centric, even though we're conglomerate. We still have our foundation is deep in healthcare roots, and so heavily driven by HIPAA naturally and NIST type things. We just had, and Daniel, again, to bring out his name, participated with us. We have so many external audits. It is just unbelievable. Every week there are different audits going on, sometimes in parallel, in different business divisions. And we had one recently based on high trust. So, you asked the question about where are we going, what's our foundation, and regardless of what standards we may be following, we have these external bodies who are coming in to audit us based on their particular one also, and since we contract with them, they're expecting us to be compliant. So our normal language set may be here, but when they come in, we have to show how that aligns with their particular set.
Okay, one more.
So my question would be, we talked earlier about the government has the ability to do offensive red team type stuff, and as well as defensive type stuff, and private industry is kind of relegated to the defensive type stuff. Can we use a sports analogy and say a good defense is a good offense? And so if I can have a good defense, can I go do that same measure and actually attack someone who's attacking me ethically, legally, to stop that so that I have a good defense or a good perimeter?
Great question. Unfortunately, policy doesn't allow for commercial organizations to do that yet. But you're right. There's organizations within the Department of Homeland Security and at NSA that can assist commercial organizations with shutting down those attacks that are originating from other countries. For example, we've had numerous breaches. NASDAQ was hacked a couple of years ago. they came to NSA and said, hey, we have these guys hacked into our system. They're doing all this stuff. Can you help us with it? And NSA helped them with it. And we have a lot of professionals here from the Department of Homeland Security, from NIST. They work with commercial organizations to protect their systems against hackers. And if need be, they'll work with they'll contact US Cybercom and initiate a hack or an attack to shut down something that's originating in a foreign location. So it is, commercial organizations do have access to government customers or organizations that can help them attack if need be. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay.
I can't do it directly, but I can call on someone.
Yeah, you can. It's a hotline. You just call them up, and they'll shut it down.
On that note, for anybody who might be thinking of starting a business where you go out and actually do something like what the NSA does, you really want Title 10 protection if you were ever to do anything like that.
Can I explain Title 10 versus Title 50 so everyone's aware?
Yeah, absolutely. Go right ahead.
Okay, great. So Title 10 is the warfighter authority. So when the U.S. attacks another country or is fighting a war, the military members operate from Title 10 authority. So it allows them to kill other people if need be. Just to simplify it, right? That's why soldiers can kill someone and it's
or destroy things.
Yes. Or destroy things, blow things up. Title 50 is the intelligence gathering authority. NSA operates from that authority. And that basically only allows them to collect foreign intelligence. Now, the NSA is allowed to collect domestic intelligence with a warrant, right? After 9/11, FISA was put in place and also PAA because we had bad guys that came from another country here to the United States. And as soon as they entered the United States, NSA wasn't capable of tracking them. And because of that, we had a situation of 9/11. That's one of the main reasons. So policy was put in place to allow the NSA with the warrant to do those type of things. But that's Title 50. And that's why US Cybercom was created, because how can you expect for NSA to collect this information, see what's going on, and not be able to do anything, right? They were seeing this stuff happen every day. And me personally, when I was in Iraq, I went to Iraq in 2007. I was one of the first cyber operators working in Iraq. I would see communications come in from bad guys saying, hey, we're going to attack this military unit on this road at this time. Right? And I would go to my leadership and I would say, sir, they're going to attack our troops. What can we do about it? And they would say, you can't do anything about it. Right? You're operating underneath Title 50 authority. This is top secret. You can't do anything. And I would say, sir, are we supposed to let those soldiers die? And they would say, Sergeant Lawrence, there's nothing we can do about it. So with the creation of US Cybercom, we were technically able to circumvent that Title 50 issue and transfer it over to Title 10 to allow for military members and government civilians to conduct cyber operations at will if need be when directed.
So yeah, the difference between Title 10, Title 10 gives you Geneva protections. So former military who worked in the cyber realm or in the electromagnetic spectrum. Title 10 gives you Geneva protections. Otherwise, if the enemy or the people you attack were to get hold of you, you're considered a spy and they can execute you on the spot. So Title 10 is a good thing. All right, so thank you everybody. We're going to move on to another topic which I think is extremely important and probably very interesting to everybody. Although I do notice the cyber part where everybody says, oh, this is all we ever talk about, but boy, do we just talk about it when it comes up. So one of the other topics I want to get some discussion on here is what is IT's role in transformation? And I'm not just talking our IT transformation, but what about the business? Business always has to evolve, right? You have to meet the growing needs of your customer base, and you need to be agile in order to survive. If we think back to our first discussion this morning. So, Carla, why don't you start?
I'll start. I'll first start with saying that it is an organizational thing, not just it starts there. Because IT can't be successful in transformation of any kind if the business is not on board. Because we all know that what we have in our systems, the functionality that's in our systems is all driven by the business, the requirements and the needs at that time. But after you've been in business, for a while, some of that doesn't make sense anymore. So then you have to go through a transformation. And we have at C-Spire, there's this phrase that's called easy to do business with. But in order to be easy to do business with, we can't have those roadblocks in our systems. We can have those complicated rules and policies, that we've put there. So the company has to change, the organization has to change, the policies have to change, because when they change, then the IT systems can become simple. They can become easy, for our customers, and also, for our reps and whoever has to use our systems to use them. But also, it's key, that simplicity is key in order for us to be quick to market. That's important to us as well. But it's hard to do that when you are, in a situation where you have complex, business functions that you embedded into your solutions. So to transform takes a transformation of the organization as a whole, every functional area in the organization to think differently. We don't have to do it that way because we've always done it that way. We can change. Then that trickles down into the IT systems, become simple, become not complex, so that we are easy to do business with. So our customers will continue, to come back because it's easy for them to complete that transaction, because it's easy, for them to really to do what they are trying to do. But it is an organizational change. And then from an IT perspective, transforming, being quick to market, for where it makes sense, being iterative and agile, which is for us, it's most of the time, because that's where we have to be. It just makes all the difference in the world. When the organization changes, transform, then IT can transform much easier, but we have to have those sound processes. It really just depends on the culture of the organization. That's what really drives who you are and your ability to transform. But when you do, then what we do becomes simpler and easier, and we can be quick to market with good agile and iterative processes in place.
Thank you, Carla. Steve, you want to talk about how your IT organization helped Baptist do this latest transformation?
Yeah, when I first got here 5 years ago, we did a benchmark of our costs, and what we found was we were over-invested in software, under-invested in infrastructure, and really under-invested in essentially staff, IT staff. And the reason we were over-invested in software was because we, just like I think other industries in the 90s, had these silos, best of breed, every department had their own system, so you relied less on the a centralized data management governance and more around departmental autonomy. So that changed in and around year 2000, all those SAP implementations, ERP and all that really hit big. Healthcare, that hit in about 2008, 2009. Baptist a little bit late to the game in terms of adopting a relatively single system. Still, healthcare is so specialized, there are still departments that have special systems, but those special systems are doing very specific special clinical things, such as radiation oncology or some of the really high-end cardiology procedures. And I am curious, how many of you folks actually are Baptist Healthcare, have Baptist Healthcare doctors or providers? Okay, so again, when you come to see your doctor in the office in November, they will be working off the same med list and the same problem list and the same allergy list as the hospitalist will, or the ED doctor will see when you present with an emergency or with something you need to come to the hospital for. So again, it'll be a single record. And that is transformational. And the reason IT is in the middle of that, and it really is an IT and a finance play, because it's about resources, and it really is about bringing together the whole organization. And we are an overhead department. We recognize that. The people doing the work are out there in the field. We have to respect that. The whole goal of the PMO, project management, is to bring those people in, make sure their voice is heard, make sure their subject matter experts are driving the decisions on how the systems are configured, but getting the systems configured on a budget, on a timeline, and with the right critical thinking. So on top of their subject matter experts being part of that process, we also have a role in the PMO, just like process improvement, to make sure the right critical thinking went into the assessment of those final decisions. And so once those final decisions are made, we basically put the bow on it, however you want to look at that, but we bring it all together across departments, across business units, and then roll that out in a collective activation to where you have that essentially project management, but you have to bring the resources to bear at the right time, in the right manner, and that's really what our role is in transformation. So it's empowering the departments with resources and support to make sure they can succeed and carry the day as they go to really change how they do business and how they serve you. And again, we really look forward to November. We're going to redo our patient portal. We're going to redo all the systems that deliver care to all of you that use Baptist Healthcare, and you will see a difference in terms of how we can our agility and our ability to really not miss anything and take care of the community. Looking at population health, chronic conditions, we'll be moving that to another level and really empower Baptist to again improve the health of the communities we serve and be your trusted partner in terms of delivering care to you and your families.
Anyone else? Mike?
Might just add a little bit, talking about role and transformation. And so I look back in the 80s and 90s, very, very centric. And if there was going to be transformation, it came from IT. Because all the computers were in IT, and then there were the workers out there. Post Y2K, and still got personal wounds from that one. And especially after mobile devices, especially cellular phones, smartphones, started rolling out, explosion, right? Explosion in the masses learning how to use technology more effectively. And you saw this transition, especially in the workplace, of the synergies moving out of IT and into the functional areas. So the transformation all of a sudden became a village. So one of my peers at Baptist, when we say it takes a village, he spells that capital I, capital T. IT takes a village. It can't just be what's happening back with that centric IT team. Now it has to be us working with inclusive, cross-departmental, cross-functional teams, but where we are still a significant player in all of that. Because we're very strong at solutioning, we're very strong at process, very strong at problem solving, a very creative bunch. So I don't believe it doesn't happen right without us being in the middle of the mix. But it's going to fail if we try to just be the mix by ourselves.
We're definitely on the delivery end of all that. One thing I'll say that transformation is a must. I was just at a conference probably 2 weeks ago, and it truly is. It's that we have to transform or we will die. Our business will not survive if we don't transform what we do. You think about, what Uber has done to the taxi business. You think about what Amazon has done, to the big box retailer, Walmart and others. So, but that's all enabled by what we do, every day. So it is a must for all of our organizations. And then we are, to your point, looking for partners who can help us, through those transformations in order for our companies to stay in business.
Right. So from my perspective, some of the things I've seen as we talk about transformations on the IT side, in organizations where I've seen a successful transformation, whether it be a business organizational transformation or even an IT transformation, what I generally see is IT and our vendor partners, right? They inform the leadership on what's in the art of the possible for a transformation. But leadership, the CEO, the business needs to decide where it's going to go and what its requirements are. And then once they're informed, they make that decision. Then, in many cases, especially in the industries we're in, IT takes over and we just make it happen. So that's, from my perspective, that's where I've seen the success come. So, I believe that our vendor partners, the small businesses with those new technologies, if they come in and you can present a clear picture and a business case of what that transformation looks like, boy, you're going to become a partner.
And again, when you say taking it over, my peers would bridle at that statement. But our definition of taking it over was we brought 30 subject matter experts in from the department. And so the directive to the department leaders was provision your subject matter experts onto the team, 40 hours a week, maybe 50, whatever. But basically, we brought those people into the team. So instead of ramping up and hiring consultants or healthcare consulting experts or more IT people. We really brought those people in, fresh from the field, paired them up with IT critical thinkers, as Mike said, solutioners, and I think we're going to have a really good outcome on this project. And we'll get through November, and then we'll get into optimization, and then that'll be another exciting opportunity to continue to. And transformation and incremental transformation might be an oxymoron, but that's really where we're at in healthcare, because we have to move at a certain pace to make sure we keep our patients and their families safe. So there's only so much you can do in terms of making sure our caregivers are fully trained and up to speed on how those tools are going to really help them take care of you.
And it's a continuous thing, right? Because what makes the whole iterative agile process work is you do just what you said. Everyone's together. Everyone's in the room together. You're not talking to people individually, or you end up with a stack this thick of requirements, right? You're all in the room. You're talking through it together. Every part, of the organization. So when you leave there, everybody has a very good understanding of where we need to be. But that's what makes it work, is for everyone, to be there. You hear from the people on the front.
We call those the integrated planning teams, right? Or from all across all the different business units, exactly. So any questions on transformation? Happy hour starting soon. Okay, well, let's start over at the right with Tony, and give us a little talk about IT and the CIO strategies for 2017. Where do you see your company and the needs of your company and the needs of IT, especially in the specific marketplace that you operate in?
Right. As a small business, we're around 400 employees, and we grew extremely fast. So we needed to scale quickly at our office and across the country. Right now, I think we're in about 15 different states. So we use infrastructure as a service and software as a service. We work with Microsoft 365. It's probably the best thing that's ever happened to us. We're able to turn on and off access immediately. And I can basically run most of the company from my cell phone because of that capability. So from a small business perspective, utilizing services that other larger businesses offer save us a lot of money and allow us to scale infinitely, to be honest with you. So,
Steve?
Well, so Baptist is an $800 million company moving toward $1 billion, 6,500 to 7,500 employees in terms of FTEs versus employees, if you know how that math works. So we're almost too small to be big, but we're way too big to be small. So our journey over the next year will be to continue to look at our collaboration strategies in terms of moving forward with all the things that are happening in that space that I think are really going to put our traditional use of email and file shares to bed. I mean, that'll go, in the next 2 years, that'll be a world of difference in terms of how we work together. We'll be working on that over the next year, and then optimizing our systems. Again, from a scale perspective, we don't foresee any challenge in our infrastructure in terms of scale and storage, servers, and network. The cyber is a continual practice. It's just, it's like exercising, taking your daily walk. And so it won't. It may not sound exciting, but it'll really move Baptist Healthcare forward in the next year and a half.
So for us, for the remainder of 2017, and we're also planning for 2018, there are certain things that are table stakes for us. 5 nines, uptime, operational, efficiencies, delivering with high quality what we do deliver. So those things are just important that we just do. But we also, enable, what I consider all of our lines of business to grow, right? to grow in revenue. And we do that by delivering systems that they can use, that's easy to use, that's simple, so that we don't have manual processes out there that our reps and that our customer care, our team is having to utilize. So we have automation is a big deal for us, in all of our lines of business, making sure that we automate that allows our business to scale. and we talk about our digital transformation, what we call our digital first strategy is a key thing for us. And from an IT perspective, we're the delivery side of that. That is all the work that we do on our mobile apps and also on C-Spire.com. So that's a big driver for us, that we want customers, you know, to interact with us. Their first think of that as top of mind, but in order to do that, you know, it has to be easy. And then they have to be able to solve their problem or answer that support question. AI is a big deal for us online from a support perspective, to prevent the customer from having to pick up the phone to call us. So they should be able to get their questions answered. But we have a lot of work that's in flight in that space that we will be delivering later this year and into next year. But it's all about delivering on who we are, that is being customer inspired, that is really bringing, you know, great solutions, you know, to our customers when they need it.
Thank you, Carl. Mike?
Standardizing, improving our ability to standardize across the organization, but not losing our agility in doing so, because, you know, as Carla and some of the others have talked about, you know, the agility has been the key to our success, and so we can't lose that. But yet we can't have, you know, 100 flavors out there we're trying to support either. We're data driven. So improving the way that we're housing and using the data from our various systems that we do use, and making the right decisions off that data, so that we're doing things more effectively and more efficiently to meet the needs of the communities we serve. And as a workforce, staying better connected. It becomes a real challenge as we grow, especially with diverse business units, and we're even here in the Pensacola area, you know, we're spread out over 4 counties in multiple sites, and trying to keep even the local workforce well connected with the right topics is a challenge. And meeting them where they do their work, and not expecting them to come to this one place to get their information when that's not in their natural swing. So meeting our workforce in their natural swing. And the other one is learning to work differently. You know, we're still there's all these tools out there, but we're still trying to figure out how do we use those effectively. So what does everybody do? Everybody falls back on the norm and sends out a ton of emails and just buries one another. So we got to figure out how to work differently. We need, to Sean's point, we need Sherpas that can come in and guide us on how to work differently. Because you can get pretty much in your day-to-day, you can kind of get stuck in, I got to get through today and satisfy the needs of operations. And so we need fresh eyes that can come in periodically and share with us some new ways to do things.
Definitely. So, and for us, standardization across the enterprise, you know, one of our approaches, centrally managed distributed services. And we see that as a way to optimize the way we serve our clients. So with that, I'd like to thank everybody for coming today. I think you guys are going to hang out for a few minutes, so if anybody would like to come up and have a moment, shake a hand and say hello, please don't everybody rush up at once, but come on up and say hi. Again, thank you all for coming. Paul, we got the reception coming up, or you got a couple of words to say? All right, I'm going to turn the mic over to Paul. Thank you all for attending today. I hope you found it informative. I know I certainly did, and I enjoyed myself very much. Thank you. Thank you to our panel for their participation. I found their insight and this discussion extremely valuable. So, Paul?
Thank you so much, Sean. Thank you, everyone. So, yes, I am going to be the one between you and the happy hour, so I'm going to move quickly on this. Just a couple of quick items to make sure you're ready for tomorrow. So there is a reception just outside past the bar near the pergola, sponsored by Navy Federal Credit Union this evening. Some housekeeping for tomorrow. Breakfast starts at 7:30. Conference will kick off at 8:30 with our keynote speaker, which is going to be Dan Chaddock, our Vice President of Enterprise Software from Navy Federal Credit Union. Dan's right over here. Dan, where you wave? There's Dan right there. So he'll be speaking tomorrow. Very important, wear your badges. Don't forget them. Don't leave them in the car and take another car tomorrow. Don't leave them in a bag, take another bag. Because if I see a badge with a handwritten name, I'm going to call you out. You forgot your badge. All right, bring your badges. Share on social media, ITEN WIRED. Don't forget, hashtag ITEN WIRED. Be careful, don't share some of the pictures on the pergola. We'll be careful with that one there. And then make sure tomorrow, if you have cell phones, old cell phones you don't want, or hard disks, take the cell phone batteries out to bring the cell phones in, and you can take them out here. Gilmore Services is shredding them, literally shredding them, and they'll give you a mason jar with your items in it. And you can see they have, there you go, there's one right there, see it? They actually will shred them for you. So if you have old hard disks, or if you have any old phones, take the battery out of the phones, bring them, you get to go in the trailer, it's the coolest thing in the world. So please bring those tomorrow. All right, and then we have one gift? Yes, Jim, big toe. Oh, I can't read your handwriting. No. You've already given that to me. I just got to find my page here. There we go. I just got to make sure I know which one this is. This is the gift card. $100 Visa gift cards from Compliments of Cox. And the winner is Jacob Crowdis. Is Jacob here? See, you got to be here to win. Now, you guys, remember what happened this morning? It took forever to go through this. All right, don't do this to me. Forrest Durr. Ernest Colvin. See, I struck out again. Johnny Odom.
Right here.
There we go. Woo. Man, this is a lot of work. Come on down, Johnny. Get a picture taken. Eric will direct you to the right spot.